Welcome to Baseball Biz on Deck. I am Mark Carpenter, your host, and with me today, of course, is Matt Germain. But we have a very special guest, a man from up north, another member of the AL East, and somebody whose team ought to be looking pretty hot this year. We're talking to Mr. Nat Gordo from the podcast Play Tessie. How you doing today, buddy?
Good, fellas. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Matt and I were talking before you got on here, and it's looking last year, we had some projections of who would do what. And of course, being Tampa Bay Rays fans, I kind of was thinking, Orioles and Rays, and that didn't work out too well. But you guys, I mean, you look at the AL East, you guys at least broke even.
Yeah, I mean, if you compare last year to this year, just the vibe is it's a complete 180 with the fan base, with the way the team talks about themselves. Like, you have Alex Cora talking about how last year they had to be very loud about how they think they have a chance, but this year, the roster speaks for itself, and they can just kind of put their heads down and get to work. And I think the fan base is happy to let it happen.
Well, look at who you have. I mean, my goodness, man. I was going down the list as far as payroll. I do have to tell you, stop for a second. As I was preparing for today, I had Abbott and Costello pop into my head. Who's on first? What's on second? Third? I don't know. Do you know who's going to be on third?
I don't think anybody knows, but if you read the tea leaves a little bit, I mean, Alex Bregman has been there for a week and a half or so at this point, and he's worked at second base primarily in maybe one of those days. So maybe it tips their hand a little bit as to what they're thinking. I know that they're very excited about Kristian Campbell, and Vaughn Grissom came into camp looking jacked, and David Hamilton looks like he's in the best shape of his life. So they've got three prime candidates for second base there that they're excited about all three. And if they want to fit any of those guys into the lineup, the way to do it would be one of them at second, Bregman at third, and even though he's not going to want to do it, Devers would be at DH, and then that would just kind of put Masataka Yoshida either in left field or in limbo.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Devers the highest paid Red Sox there is right now?
Maybe not like this year. Bregman will be paid more. Well, I guess there's some deferred money, but he is the highest paid Red Sox player of all time. Biggest contract they've ever handed out. And fresh into that deal, too. I think this is only year 2 of a decade-long deal. So,
yeah, I think it's 27 mil. And I thought, and you have to have a certain approach and attitude as a player if you're going to be able to command that much money. And I heard a little bit, maybe I'll insert it later, the interview with him. Obviously he has his interpreter, but when they got to the part is would he DH, and Devers didn't wait for the translator. He just looked over and said, no. Very nice and crisp.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to pause it here. Okay. Because this is where, we make a lot of predictions for the season. We do a lot of, if everything goes well, nobody gets hurt, nobody gets angry, How many games has Trevor Story played in the last 2 years?
I know the number of games played since he got here, which I believe is 3 years. He's played 163 games in his 3 years as a Red Sox.
So my point with that would be there's a greater chance that the Red Sox need a new shortstop at some point. My question is, could Alex Bregman handle shortstop if he needed to? In which case you keep Rafael Devers at third. And then you have, the other options that you mentioned before, like Kristian Campbell. You have Marcelo Mayer, who could also probably handle second base if needed. You have other options. Sorry about that, guys. As well as Rafaela, which I really like. Like I've told Mark before, he's one of my favorite kind of Red Sox toolsy guys that can move around all over the place and just be elite wherever he goes. At least, play to a high level on the field. So the scenarios, my point would be, the scenarios are kind of endless in terms of how it could shake out. What I do know is nobody is going to question Alex Cora if he makes the decision. I don't see Rafael Devers blowing up and saying, I'm not playing today because they put me at first base or they put me at DH. I think he's earned enough respect
Yeah.
with those players and with Rafael Devers that he'll get it sorted out, and guys will probably move around a little bit as needed as Trevor Story and others get hurt and move around. But what my point that I've made with Mark before is the Red Sox, for the first time, I think in quite a few years, have that second and third layer of players that they're able to call up on. And that's why I have more faith in them sustaining a winner in 2025 than the Yankees and Orioles. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you mentioned Alex Cora and the respect that he commands. If you talk to people that are down there in Fort Myers, ask anyone there, and they will tell you that the whole Devers story is a nothing burger because you're right. Like he's not gonna throw a tantrum and request a trade. He's not gonna refuse to play. If they tell him he's gonna DH, he won't like it, but you know what? He'll do it. And if he does DH, that doesn't mean that he's gonna hang up the glove forever and he's gonna be David Ortiz. Like no, like he'll find his way into the field. You brought up a scenario like if Trevor Story goes down again, yeah, like my thought would be Alex Bregman, depending on how long term a
Right.
potential Trevor Story injury would be in this case. Like I don't think Alex Bregman, I don't think you want him playing shortstop at age 31, for the first time in his major league career for like a full season, but can he fill in now and then? Yeah. So in those situations, yeah, Devers could play third even if he's your DH on opening day. But longer term, I don't think Marcelo Mayer is ready opening day. He doesn't have a single AAA at bat to this point. But like if Story makes it through the first half of the year and suffers an injury in the second half, then you've got depth. You got Marcelo Mayer there. But I agree. The Red Sox depth this year in every phase of the team too. It's not just the offense. It's the rotation. It's the bullpen. They've got depth in all three sort of areas of the game that I don't like. Even some of the best Red Sox teams that we've seen in my lifetime, they've won 4 championships, and I think that this might be the deepest Red Sox team I've seen. Not necessarily the best, but in terms of just the depth that they have on the bench in the minor leagues, like they're going to have a very talented team in Worcester this year that's ready to send guys up when needed.
And the reason I brought up the Bregman move to shortstop is because I've seen it with the Rays. When he needed a shortstop for a bid, they brought Joey Wendell over, and Joey Wendell kind of transitioned very easily because he was such a strong third baseman to that position. You didn't want him there every day for a long period of time, but he was good there. And I see Alex Bregman as a similar defender as Joey Wendell at third base, so I think he could handle it if he had to. But you're right, like in terms of the position that the Red Sox have set themselves up in, extremely strong relieving, really strong pitching. I still think they might be a player for Dylan Cease if they can work something out at some point. I don't know if it happens or not, but the other part is they're still below 200 million spent. So they can add at the deadline as well if something falls through and they need to add that extra piece. So I think this is definitely a year, like I told Mark, like I see the Rays having a tougher time beating the Red Sox, although they beat them today, than they
Yeah,
will
yeah.
beating the Yankees and Orioles.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be a different, like the Red Sox and Yankees are just such different kind of opponents because the Yankees are gonna try to beat you with their big, front of the rotation guys in Cole and Freed, and they've got the big meat in the middle of the order in Judge. Like the Red Sox are gonna try to beat you to death with depth. And not that's not to say that they don't have stars. Like Garrett Crochet is going to be a Cy Young candidate. Devers gets MVP votes every year. You'd hope that Bregman and Duran are in that class too. Like they've got guys, but I like to think that the Red Sox, if they make the playoffs this year, it's going to be because they limit the amount of days. Because every team has those days where it's like, oh my God, it's like the day after a doubleheader and multiple guys went down, and we have to piece this lineup together. But even those lineups for the Sox are going to be filled with major league caliber players, which is not something that most teams can say. So I like to think that if they're going to get into the upper 80s or even the 90s in wins this year, that those games are going to be a big part of that.
Well, Nat, I can tell you that Matt and I have talked in the past about depth, and certainly, as he mentioned, certainly with Boston. And the Red Sox, Matt, when we were speaking in the past, we talked about a six-man rotation, and that's something that it looks like Nat when when we're talking with the Red Sox, you've got that depth now, and I mean, and I love it. I wish every team was able to put together that strong of a not to want you're just the nine guys out there, but everybody else behind them as well. And we've got to go. What do you feel about that rotation, six-man rotation?
Well, you know, six-man rotation, it's always nice in theory, but it never ends up working out that way. And you're already kind of seeing that with the Red Sox. Cutter Crawford doesn't look like he's going to be ready for opening day, and it might be a semi-extended absence. Like, we'll see. His knee's been barking. It's an injury from last year that kind of popped back up right as he was getting to camp. But I mean, you got Crochet, you got Houck. Both of them were all stars last year.
Yeah.
You're gonna have Brian Bayo, who they're super high on, just extended. Gave him a lot of money for not what he's done, but what they think he will do. You've got Walker Buehler and Lucas Giolito, both Cy Young candidates in the past, and that's five guys right there. When Cutter Crawford gets healthy, we'll see if all five of those guys are healthy. Brian Bayo's a little bit behind schedule too, and not a guarantee to make the opening day roster, but they just traded for a kid, Quinn Priester, last year. They traded Nick York, one of their former first-round picks, back in 2020 for him. They feel really good about what he's done. He's put on weight. He's added velocity. They're really excited about him. They've got Richard Fitz and Cooper Criswell as depth. So, again, it's like I hesitate to say that they're the best rotation in the AL just because I find it impossible to see anyone surpass the Mariners, but Fangraphs has them with the highest projected F4 in the American League this year. And I think a big part of that is the depth that they have. Guys go down and you feel good about the guys who can step in, which, I mean, even just as recently as last year, like, someone would go down and it would be Brad Keller comes in and starts a game. Josh Winkowski comes in and starts a game, and he's not stretched out, so it's really only 3 innings. You're not going to see too many bullpen games this year. You're not going to see too many outings with AAA pitchers who either aren't ready to make their big league debuts yet, being forced to, or quadruple A players who shouldn't be starting games for the Boston Red Sox anyway. I think the rotation is going to be maybe this team's biggest strength this year, but that's not to say that things don't have to go right. Like, you're looking at two guys in Buehler and Giolito that have been all-stars in the past, but if you go based off of the most recent data, Buehler had, even though he closed out the World Series, it was the worst year of his career last year.
Right.
Lucas Giolito coming off the Tommy, or the non-Tommy John thing, and the second half of the year before that, he wasn't very good. So these guys are obviously, running through the Red Sox program. The Red Sox feel good about what they're doing with them, but from an outside perspective, it's like you got to see it.
Right. So the Patrick Sandoval is another one that you guys brought in, who will be on the 60-day IL for the start of the season, but you can envision him come back June, July-ish. That's a pretty good ace in the hole to have in the back. I'm not saying he's an ace, but a 2 to 3 F4 pitcher. If Lucas Giolito needs a breath, mid-season, they can actually hold them back. But what are your thoughts on the other huge piece that they may be adding this year on Roman Anthony? And who would you say is the surprise of the spring so far?
Well, they're super excited about the big three, and Jeff Passan dropped an article today, and you can see not just how excited that the Red Sox are about those guys, but about how excited the industry as a whole is about them. Roman Anthony, like, consensus top position player prospect in the game. He's been getting a lot of, all three of them have been playing a lot this spring, and it's been fun to see it. Just because, like, most spring trainings, it's like the starters play 4 innings and then they're down, and then a bunch of guys that you've never really heard of come in, and it's like, all right, I can turn the game off in the 5th or 6th inning. But with the Sox this spring, it's like, yeah, the starters are in, but you've got 3 of the top 10 to 15 prospects in baseball playing the second half of those games. So it's been fun. They're excited to see what they do this year. I don't know that Roman is going to make the opening day roster, though. If you ask him, he will tell you that is his intention, is to make the opening day roster. He has a goal and he wants to make it. He doesn't want more time in AAA. But obviously, if that's what happens, he'll do it. And he's a really good, really mature kid for a 20-year-old. You talk to people there, and they say he's one of the most mature 20-year-olds that they've ever talked to. But I think maybe the one that gets even more hype is Kristian Campbell right now, just because of the success story that he is. Drafted just a couple years ago in the 4th round as a comp pick, and really just didn't hit home runs because he didn't elevate the ball. He didn't hit the ball in the air. And the Red Sox have bat speed programs. They have launching. They have programs for everything you can think of with their bats. And Kristian Campbell, they're hoping, is going to be one of the first major success stories of a guy that was not a highly touted prospect or in the draft, that they have now turned into a potential, or they feel a potential star. So when you go to camp, those three, even though they're like, people are excited about the big league roster, the big league team this year, those three command a ton of the conversation down there, just because of, how often do you get 3 offensive prospects in the top 15 that are all expected to break or make their major league debuts, in the same season? Like, it's exciting.
Right. And I think that's why I see the Red Sox moving somebody like maybe Tristan Casas or somebody else along with prospects to try to get somebody like Dylan Cease, because I think they do like him so much. They want him in the lineup. They want Kristian Campbell to push Alex Bregman to third, put Rafael Devers at first, and then you have your infield set in a way that actually, is pretty dominant when you look at it, if they perform to the levels they can do. So it's really, you're right. Like, the Rays have an extremely hyped top 5 prospects, but I don't think they combined at the same level as those top 3 for the Red Sox are. They're just a little bit behind, but that's with Junior Caminero, graduated.
Yeah.
So I think, the Rays right now have a lot of hype going on about Curtis Mead. He's come into camp. He looks
great.
He's looked like a completely changed person. He took the 24 season to heart, made the changes he needed to. Who is in the Red Sox camp that has done that kind of thing for you guys?
That's a good question. You ask Alex Cora, who has stuck out to him at camp, and the 2 guys that he is brought up. I brought up Quinn Priester before. He mentioned him by name, and he mentioned Garrett Whitlock, who has kind of been a forgotten man with the Red Sox, just because they've tried the last few years to make him a starter. Early on last season, had to get that internal brace procedure in his elbow, lost for the season. He looks like he's on track right now, and they'll pitch him out of the bullpen. So they're not going to try with the starter role again, which I think is fine considering how much depth they've got in the rotation and their need for arms in the bullpen. But he's throwing harder than he has since he was elite in 2021. They're really excited. They're taking it slow with him, as they should, coming off the injury. But they're really excited about him and the potential that he has out of the bullpen this year.
I always saw him as similar to Drew Rasmussen, like all the potential in the world to be a really awesome starter, but for some reason the physicality of it just isn't working out. I know Andrew Miller was one that was switched over from starter to reliever and became a 2-inning guy, and I think both Rasmussen and Whitlock would fit in that mold, that you're better off using them as 2 innings guys, or sometimes 3 innings if you need it. And they'd be dominant in that role. So I don't know what the Rays are going to do with Rasmussen, if they're going to get him starting, but I just thought, every camp has that guy that kind of put in the major work in the off season. Then you can tell as soon as they walk on that field, you're like, whoa, that guy has changed. So
Yeah.
it's always nice to get those stories, and that gets people peeking over the fence at spring training and at the team a little bit closer.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see which guys come into camp, best shape of their life guys. The other one, in terms of just like who came into camp looking like a different human, was Vaughn Grissom, because obviously a huge piece the only piece of the Chris Sale trade last year, comes over, and they had him playing winter ball in Puerto Rico, and he didn't have, I don't know, that what he'll tell you is that he didn't have like a gym that the gym accommodations there just weren't up to his standard, and he lost weight, and then he got sick a couple of times, got hurt a couple of times, and just his season last year was lost. It took a toll on him mentally, but he reset in the offseason. He looks ginormous coming into camp this spring, and when people say that Bregman should play second and Devers should play third, or when people say that Campbell should break camp as the second baseman, he says not so fast, because he is fully intent on competing for that second base job. They haven't had him taking fly balls in the corner outfield spots. They haven't had him working at first base at all yet. Like, they're giving him a legitimate chance to win that second base job because of the work he's put in this offseason. Wow. So I know that he's really excited about what he thinks he can do. He's a really confident guy right now. And I it's good to see the team giving him that shot.
In terms of the money, I know the ownership in Boston has gotten a lot of flack. They think all their money is being poured into Liverpool and other things. So what is there any outcry for extensions, for big signings? Like, I know Garrett Crochet only has a little bit amount of time left. Jaron Duran could probably use an extension and some, just to solidify that core piece that you guys would be able to bank on going forward, knowing what the cost is going to be. So who's getting the most kind of noise when it comes to extensions and signings?
The answer to that one is definitely Garrett Crochet. They traded for him this offseason, 2 years of control remaining. But the reason that it's getting that much buzz is, you could point to last trade deadline where he basically told the Chicago White Sox, like, I'm not going to pitch in the postseason for a team that you trade me to unless I'm extended. And he's expressed a willingness to talk about extensions with the Red Sox, and it remains to be seen if those conversations have taken place this spring yet. I would assume they have, but we haven't heard about any progress or resolution. I think that there's a legitimate chance that something there gets done. I think fans would be pretty disappointed at this point if it doesn't. That you do not want to trade the package that they traded for Garrett Crochet just to see him walk out the door in a couple of years. Yeah. He is 25 years old, meaning he'd be a free agent at age 27. And you guys saw it this offseason with Soto. These guys who hit free agency young, and maybe Soto's not the best example just because of how accomplished he is as well, but like, if you're a high-level player and you're young and you're a free agent, you're going to get paid. So the Red Sox really should extend themselves and make sure that they get that done. And then outside of Crochet, I would say the next most buzz might be on the prospects, like Roman Anthony, Kristian Campbell, both of those guys. And we haven't heard as much about Marcelo because when Roman and Campbell talked about it, it was at the Red Sox Fan Fest and Mayer was sick and couldn't attend. But Kristian Campbell in particular expressed a legitimate willingness to sign an extension if they wanted to approach him about it. And reports are that they did plan on approaching all three of the kids about potential extensions. So yeah, something like that may not come together for any of these guys until the end of the spring. Like, we'll see. Bayo's extension last year was with maybe not even a week before the season, and then they extended Cedon Rafaela a week or two into the season. So if you follow those molds again, like, yeah, maybe something comes together closer to the season for someone, but Crochet would definitely, I think, be their number one priority. He's certainly the guy that the fans want to see extended the most. So keep an eye on him.
So the Yankees signed at 29 years old Jarrett Cole for 9 years and $324 million. If Garrett Crochet he'll never have the track record that Jarrett Cole had to that point. He'll have at least 2 seasons, let's say maybe 2.5, by the time he would sign an extension. So if he's going to be 27, though, the question to me is more about the length. Like, what length do you give somebody that hasn't exactly had the track record that you would want lengthwise? Like, he's not a 225 inning a year pitcher. So do you give him more than 7 years? Do you go to 8? Will other teams go to 8? Like, to what point is he going to force the Red Sox hand? Because he knows the same thing you just said. He knows they gave up a huge package, and his agent's going to whisper that in his ear the whole time.
Yep.
he'll be demanding things that the Red Sox are going to be in a very uncomfortable place. So they're going to have to be comfortable with losing him for 2 years or a year and a half, whatever it may be, at some point within that deal. So in that case, do you bank on the fact that he'd be able to rebound effectively and then just call it a day and make it an 8-year deal or a 9-year deal?
I think if you put an 8 or a 9 year deal on the table for the Red Sox, like today,
Right.
I think it would be they'd be pretty comfortable with it, just because if you think about an 8 year deal, he's 25. That doesn't even take you to age 34. The type of extension I think would come together if they're able to get it done, just because of how young he is. It's almost like one of these ones that guys sign when they're like rookies or second year guys. Because if you sign Crochet to, let's say, a 4 year deal that starts at the end of these 2 years, that would take him until he's age 31 or 32, and he has a chance to then hit the market again there and cash in even bigger at that point. It's like he could have the best of both worlds, where you get the guaranteed money today to have generational life-changing wealth for your family for generations to come, but you also don't fully limit yourself, because you have a chance to, while you're still in your prime, hit the open market and have 30 teams bid for you, which is when you can truly cash in at your max. But if he doesn't sign an extension, he's not making very much money this year.
Yeah.
So you run the risk of getting hurt again. He's been hurt in the past. The reason I think people just expect this thing to get done is because it just makes so much sense for both parties, more so than other guys in the league, just because of his injury history.
I'm going to jump to another team here for a moment, just because I couldn't believe they didn't get something done. And that is the Blue Jays with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. It's like, come on. And I love that this player, and we're going to talk with the guy from the Blue Jays here soon anyway, but I look at that and I'm thinking, my gosh, he can pick from 28 other teams, because we know it's not going to be the Yankees. That that you're not taking care of this man now. And if you look at what they have for a budget, the Toronto is spending the fifth largest payroll with almost $233 million. And they're not going to take care of that. But not to want to say with the payroll with them. But the thing of it is, I don't know where they are when it comes to farm systems, but I know the Red Sox, as far as having some depth, you guys have some. I think you guys came in as number one on Baseball America recently as far as your farm system.
Yeah, and the Blue Jays are on the other end of that. They're like generally consider a bottom five. The Blue Jays messed this up, in my opinion, years ago, because like at this point, this offseason, after Vlad saw what happened with Juan Soto and the amount of money that he got, like, how could you not just play out the last year, try to crush it like he knows he can,
Yep.
and then hit the market and have, Pete Alonso's on a 1 year deal. You'll have the Mets in on him. You'll have the Yankees in on him, even though like I agree, just based off of his previous comments, maybe that's not his preferred destination, but it's good to have him there. The Red Sox have been reported to maybe have interest there. I certainly hope they would. So, if you can get those three teams in on you as a free agent, I think you'd be crazy to sign an extension. I think that's why it didn't get done. I think he probably put a number on the table that was maybe the number he's hoping to get in free agency once he's there. And obviously the Blue Jays weren't going to meet that bidding against themselves. And so it looks like he'll be a free agent.
I've always said the Blue Jays messed up the Vladdy Guerrero Jr. thing when they let Alex Anthopoulos walk.
Yeah.
When that happened, they lost their way. And the front office they have now just has no clue how to build depth through their system and roster at the same time, and how to balance everything. They're completely sold on one vision. I don't know who's selling it to them, but Vladdy Guerrero Jr., I'll just compare it, okay? So the Red Sox, with a smaller revenue stream, signed Rafael Devers a respectful contract, 10 years, $324 million. The Jays, like in terms of physicality and like ability, you could compare the two really long term because Rafael Devers isn't going to stay at third base forever. He is at some point going to become either a first baseman or DH. So you can kind of look at the bats alone. They're very similar. Like they're powerful impact bats that can go up there and hit against all the best pitching, regular season playoffs. They'll carry your lineup. They'll do what they need to do. So my point is, why are the Blue Jays so disrespectful when it comes to, looking at Vladdy Guerrero as a superstar instead of saying we're betting on you and whoever comes up behind you will know that you're there and we're able to sign other players now because we brought you in. Like imagine the Red Sox in the same stream. Would if they hadn't signed Rafael Devers, would Alex Bregman have been as quick to jump in? I
Well,
don't know.
the crazy thing with how the Blue Jays have operated to me is just they offered 700 to Shohei. They offered at at least close to 700, if not more than 700, to Juan Soto, and Vladdy probably looks at Juan Soto and says like that's a good comp for me. Like Soto, I get he plays corner outfield, but on a 14-year deal, Soto's probably going to be a DH for half of it.
Yeah.
Vladdy on a long-term deal, probably going to play first base for half of it, DH for the second half of it. So yeah, I get why he'd be offended that they seem to be willing to pay that kind of money for the most premier free agents out there. But when it comes to, taking care of your own, like why am I not getting that? So I get why he didn't sign anything. I think, I struggle with to say that they mishandled it now because I bet that number was so high, but I think they mishandled it earlier on because they've had multiple chances, multiple years to extend Vlad. And, you look back, I think it was Ken Rosenthal compared it to when the Padres extended Tatis. And it's like, if you'd given Vlad something like that at that time, yeah, he signs pen to paper. And
Right.
they didn't do it. And they should have because they've got more money than God.
Well, yeah. What I say they are fifth in fifth largest payroll, 232.8 million per Sport Track. Wow. Oh, man, I tell you what, it amazes me in the game. You mentioned Anthopoulos, Matt, about as far as general managers and what they can do for a team, and that what other ones can do to virtually destroy them. How do you feel about your general manager right now, Nat?
We still got to wait and see just how it all comes together because with general managers, like Chaim Bloom was here for a few years, 3 or 4 or 5 years. What is it? Doesn't matter. Like you didn't see they still haven't really reaped the rewards of his labor yet. And you're about to see it when the kids, the big three, all Chaim Bloom draft picks come up. With Breslow, we'll learn a little bit sooner just because he spent some more money. He's made some more decisive trades. Like how the 2025 team performs, like, yes, that's a lot of that's going to be previous regime's work, but you're going to see it like some of the top players on this year's team, if all goes right, will be guys that Craig Breslow acquired. I think Sox fans are happy that he's been more decisive, that he's been willing to get uncomfortable both with trades and with money. But in the end, like if you ask them how he's done, if you ask people in the front office how they think they're doing, what they'll tell you is we haven't won yet. So until we do, we can't say that we're doing anything right. So We'll see. We'll see how it plays out this year.
That's the good answer. And I think, the way that you can spin positivity in Boston this year just goes through layers and layers and layers. I'll give you an example. If Mookie Betts was still in Boston, Roman Anthony would be blocked. So you can spin it as, oh, well, we don't have to worry about that right now. He's got a straight line up into the roster.
Or with Mookie's so good, you just move him to second base. Like he'll do anything.
Oh, yeah.
He's crazy, one of a kind.
The plate and catch if he has to, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a strange move. I felt like they brought in Chaim to do some hatchet work at the beginning, to be quite honest with you. And I thought, you poor son of a gun, but they said, oh, why don't you get the race mentality? Don't you go ahead and just cut the budget, cut it. But I am so glad to see this year looking so well for you guys. And I'm really curious to see how it all plays out. I do have to ask, as far as relievers, were you surprised to see Aroldis Chapman on your roster?
Oh yeah. Big time. I mean, going into the offseason, everything I mean, you watch the games last year and you talk to people with the team and they all say the same thing. It's like, we need velocity. We need someone from the left-hand side. So like, yes, that's Chapman right there. Like, he is all velocity and he throws from the left side. But did I actually think that the Red Sox would go out and get him just with the history that he's had, both on and off the field? It's just, I was surprised. I'm not gonna lie, I was surprised. In terms of just the pure talent alone,
Yeah.
perfect fit. But I mean, when you bring in a Aroldis Chapman, I don't care what his recent teammates have said. Apparently, he's been a great teammate the last few years. He's been a great whatever. You're going to have a lot of questions to answer. He's going to have a lot of questions to answer, and those questions have been asked, and we'll see how it goes. But from a baseball perspective, he can be like, he's incredibly talented, but he can also be a tough watch. And he made his spring debut today. I think he threw 23 pitches and only 11 of them were strikes. So he hit 101. So like, you're in February and he's doing that, but at the same time, he's gonna walk the world too. You're gonna have to just sit there and hold your breath.
The changeup he's added has actually made him a different pitcher. Like, it's actually getting him more swings and misses, despite the lowering velo, on occasion. So he's just fun to watch, and his overconfidence is just breathtaking. So I love to see him on the mound and battling, but his off the field stuff is highly questionable, I guess.
Yep.
In some cases. But when you're looking at the division and the American League in general, I guess, what teams scare you the most, and kind of you see like, okay, let's say the Red Sox are in the hunt. Which team are you looking at, or teams are you saying they're going to be tough opponents and they're going to be, the potential contenders along with the Red Sox?
Well, I mean, you got to look no further than the division. The AL East, there is no weak link in the AL East. There almost never is. You can make an argument that a few of the best teams in the AL are in the AL East. I think a team that's not in the AL East that people are maybe sleeping on a little bit is the Texas Rangers. I think they could be in line for a big bounce back season. But another team that, maybe, I don't know, maybe nationally they're not getting slept on, but I think Red Sox fans might be sleeping on how good the Yankees could be this year, because they lost Juan Soto. I don't necessarily think that they got better, but for a team that lost Juan Soto, they did about as good as you could do for yourself, having lost, in my opinion, the most talented bat in the game. They're a deeper team. They've got plenty of starting pitching depth and high-end starting pitching. They've got maybe the best closer in baseball to go along with a pretty deep bullpen, and the lineup's deeper. So maybe they don't have quite the same bats to protect Aaron Judge and surround him like Soto last year. You could be in the 5 slot in the lineup and you're counting the amount of batters you have left until you get back to the Soto Judge tandem, and that's gone. But I mean, you've got Cody Bellinger, you've got Paul Goldschmidt, you got Jazz Chisholm in that lineup, and then Giancarlo Stanton if he gets healthy. And then, of course, young kids that could break through: Jason Dominguez, Austin Wells. Like, both those guys, Anthony Volpe, I still think has more in the tank to tap into offensively.
Yeah.
So there is a ceiling with that team, and people are going to make fun of them and people are going to sleep on them, but they're definitely to be taken seriously, in my opinion.
I think it depends a lot. Like, the Yankees have a knack for bringing veterans in who overperform once they arrive. Like Paul Goldschmidt would be one that could do that. I just don't know that the bat speed is there. I also think Jarrett Cole has shown glimpses of falling, backwards a little bit. So if the health worries, he's got a lot of innings on that arm. If he were to fall, I'm not sure they have the pitching depth to replace him. They got lucky last year with Luis Gil. I didn't see that coming. I am first in line to say I really didn't think that he would perform the way he did. I don't know many that did. But they're an organization that will push to kind of plug some holes. But Brian Cashman, if enough chips fall aside, he's not really an active in-season GM. He's more of it, like you're saying, he did the off-season work, then he normally usually sits back, and then they have a hot streak, they have a cold streak, and they ride it out. And however it ends up being, it ends up being. So I guess my point would be I don't have much faith in them having the pieces to move around to improve if things were to go astray. Not like the Red Sox, not like the Orioles, not like the Rays, who have layers and layers and layers of depth. I also think there's a lot of pressure on Jason Dominguez to replace
Yes. Yes.
Gordo, and that can crush a player. It doesn't matter. Like I've seen it with Travis Snyder. I saw it with a bunch of other guys that were really talented, thrown into the fire and expected to carry a load that was too heavy for them. So those would be my fears with the Yankees. And I also think the Braves letting their ace go the way they did tells me that they may know something about him that isn't really, being talked about enough. And so the Yankees did that once with a pitcher where they brought him in and he ended up not pitching almost the entire season. So you know what? I love to bash on the Yankees. I will admit.
Well, yeah.
But you could do that with any team. But I would say the one team you didn't mention that in the American League that I would say is a good opponent this year, which is going to surprise a lot of people, are the Royals. I think they've done a lot of work to add a group together that's very cohesive, plays well together, has grown up together in a lot of cases, and they added enough depth to kind of make it an interesting year out of the Central, because the Central is always a little bit lacking in competitiveness, I think.
Yeah. The Central is maybe the most interesting division in the AL this year, just because you look at teams that could have low floors but high ceilings, like not just the Royals, who they're going to be dependent on guys like Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha to do it again, which is not a certainty, but I mean, they added to the team that they had last year, so they should be good. Tigers are another one where, if most of last year they weren't very good, and in September they were. And they've got Tarek Skubal, and they added Jack Flaherty back, and they added Gleyber Torres, and they actually tried this offseason. They added Tommy Kahnle in the bullpen. I really like him. So they're going to be a team that tries to compete. And then you got the Cleveland Guardians, who were the best team in that division last year, and they've lost talent. So I don't know. I mean, it's anyone's guess. The Twins are another one where they were solid last year, but they really didn't get any better. I don't really know where that team's going. I know they're up for sale, so I know that's contributing to it. But yeah, that division to me is a big mystery.
Yeah. I think the Astros are taking a step back, obviously, by losing Bregman. I know Isaac Paredes will do well with them, especially in that stadium. But I think, there's enough question marks around, losing Bregman and Tucker that that I don't think there's another team that's lost as much offense, and that's including Juan Soto leaving the Yankees. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another reason why I'm bullish on the Rangers this year, is just the Astros. It's going to be, I mean, don't count them out until they're out, but it's going to be an uphill battle.
Mhm.
Wow. I can't thank you enough, Nat, for being with us today. I'd like to hear a little bit more about your podcast, Play Tessie. Could you tell us a little bit about that and some of the shows you've got coming up?
Yeah, Play Tessie's had an awesome winter. We've been dropping 3 episodes a week, talking Red Sox just all the time. There's always something to talk about, even in the depths of the off season, when you're like, what the hell are they going to talk about? We always have a good time with it. We're making a trip to Fort Myers in the mid to end part of March, sort of to wrap up camp, and so we'll be excited to catch up with some of the players there. Hopefully, get some interviews either on the podcast or social content stuff. So we'll be dropping those things maybe towards the end of March, which will be fun. It'll be exciting, but yeah, man, we're just excited to get the season started. It's been a long off season, even though the end result for the Sox, we're happy with it. It took a while to get there, so it's been exhausting, and I'm just excited to be able to watch actual meaningful baseball games again.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear you're going to be coming on down here to Florida to see it down at Fort Myers. I might have to make a little trek down there myself. I'm up here in Tampa these days, and Matt's up there just a little further north than you guys, Nova Scotia. So, but my gosh, I'm looking forward to the season. I'm glad to see that you guys are enjoying the depth that you have, and God bless us all. Well, let's put the pull the Yankees all the way down to fifth in AL.
Yep, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm in.
Yeah, off the count. It's done.
Oh, okay. Thanks again, Dad, for joining us today here on Baseball Biz on Deck. It's been a pleasure having you here, my friend, and we hope to have you back again real soon, too.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
All righty.
Here, man.
Hey, Nat, that was fantastic. I appreciate it. You got thanks for sharing so much with us. And
yeah, it was a good time. Thank you guys.
You've got an exciting team, man. It's going to be interesting to watch them this year. So
fingers crossed.
All right, brother.
Feel pretty good about it. But thank you guys. Appreciate it.
All right.
We'll talk soon, all right?
All right. Take care.
All right. See you guys.
Just a reminder, you can find Matt at matgermain.bsky social. That's at mattgermain.bsky.social or Mark at baseballbizondeck.bsky.social. You may also find Baseball Biz on Deck on iHeart, Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and at baseballbizondeck.com. Special thanks to XTakeRUX for the music, Rocking Forward.